Let me ask you a quick question. Have you guys already started decorating for Christmas?
No, but tonight I'm putting out my, it's like the LED falling snowflakes all over the front of my house. One of those lights.
Yeah, I think I'm putting all the lights outside. I think we're
Really?
yeah. Oh man, and like full on decorated for Christmas. Sunday.
Oh, cool. You mean all
the
all
trees
the
up and everything.
the inside decorations and stuff?
Yeah.
Wow.
A little earlier than usual. Usually we wait until like the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
It's kind of
us
like the
too.
tradition or whatever. But, this is 2020, bro. We're doing it a little earlier, man. We're going to let that Christmas spirit ride.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Which, that means that we're going to have to do an episode about the top 10 Christmas movies of all time. Our favorite, I will say. Not top 10 of all time, because that leaves some room for some of the movies that I completely disagree with.
Yeah, me too.
And I'll cause some controversy, I'm sure. But there's a couple that, boy, I can't stand.
Yeah, there's a few that
Might
I've
even be the
never
worst
even-
movies ever that people just love and adore. So
Boy, what are we talking about? Let's get
I'm
into
not
that
getting
one
into
real
it.
quick.
No, we're not getting into that just yet. It's not
Now
time.
you have me
Too
curious.
soon.
I will say I've never seen Miracle on 34th Street.
We're not going to get there, man. We're not going to get there.
Okay, well,
Do me a favor, man. Slap that music button.
welcome back, all you turkeys, to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, a podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. I'm one of your hosts, Tyler Bence, and your
I'm
other host,
other host,
God
Woody
dang it.
Brown. You just took too long. There was too long of a pause, and I didn't know what you were doing there.
well, I didn't know.
So I
what
just
was
went
doing
for it,
either.
bro. I felt it.
I mean, I like the 10-second pause, though. It builds suspense. So what are we talking about today,
well,
bro?
I mean, real quick, let me ask you this. And I don't even, Thanksgiving's not, what is it? It's not like this week. Is it next week? Or
I
is it
never
the week
know.
after. I never know.
I
either, man.
never know.
It just reminded me whenever you called all our listeners turkeys. It reminds me of two things. One, do you remember the very beginning of Goonies? This part always made me laugh when the prison guard is walking back there, and I guess it's lunchtime for everybody or something, and he's like, all right, everybody, let's go.
Down there. Hey, turkey.
Hey, down there. Hey, turkey. I don't know why I always thought that was hilarious. It's like, yeah, right. A prison guard's going to call a prisoner
Right.
turkey.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be an expletive.
Yeah. So that was a nice little, save, I guess. They probably changed that at the last minute to make sure they got a PG rating, since some of the kids say cuss words in the movie.
Yeah, that's what's funny about the 80s, just in general. 80s, well, I guess 80s quote-unquote kids movies. It's like they would leave in certain things that obviously we couldn't show our kids now because it's a little too much. But then other stuff, they like reel back in a little.
Yeah, it's weird.
So it's weird.
Yeah. It's funny, too, because like you kind of forget about some of those moments. Right whenever a cuss word happens, you're kind of like, because, like all these things, we talk about this all the time, all these movies, like we want to get our kids into now because we just want to, like Gremlins or whatever, but we just have to be so patient on that stuff.
Well, I think because that's the age that we were sort of, we viewed all these movies. So
Yeah.
So what are we doing today?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what we did the other day when we kind of...
You mean yesterday?
Yeah. Well,
Oh, well, this is coming out.
yeah,
I
so,
got you.
We can say
Carry
the
on.
other day. Anyway, something that we did the other day, we went to one of our favorite stores that exists on the planet, and that is a store called Wizards. We've talked about it a little bit before. I think one of our first episodes, we kind of briefly mentioned that it's a place where, every now and then I'll take my son or something to take a look at some of their old, retro video games. But they sell everything from, literally like Atari all the way to, more modern games. So really it's kind of like you can go there and find used games at a really reasonable cost, but there's so much more. And so we kind of went there the other day just to kind of explore and frankly just get have a little That Would Be Rad field trip and get out of the house. Check out their back issues of comics, and they always have like really good deals on like graphic novels and stuff. It's usually buy one get one free.
Oh yeah,
which is an incredible deal.
Yeah, and then not only that, I mean, I picked up another Hellboy trade for $5, and it's buy one get one free. So $5, you walk out of there with 2 full, $17.99 Hellboy trades.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
And it's an awesome place for me to like find. I mean, there's various ways. If you're a VHS collector, there's a lot of different ways for you to find the tapes that you want. Obviously you can look on eBay. Truthfully, some of those prices are really inflated. But sometimes there's a tape that you really, 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 really want, and so you just go for it. There's also like Facebook groups and stuff that sell tapes,
I never utilize those at all. I don't use Facebook at all, but I'm always hearing about, people doing like
in the groups.
Yeah, like the little,
It's pretty
like
cool, man, but you have to be careful, right? So like if you buy something through eBay, you have a lot of like buyer protection, in place.
Right.
If someone kind of scams you, you can get a refund from eBay.
Which eBay is, I will say, I've been a member for like 20 years, and it's actually, they do actually pretty well with that stuff.
It's pretty cool. It like they didn't scam me, but I never received a tape a couple months ago, and it took about like a month and a half for it to all get kind of resolved.
Really?
Yeah, because you have to give them 30 days to send it to you. Now, this seller never responded to anything.
I've had that too.
And,
that sucks.
And it's weird too because they have a lot of things, most of their comments recently are negative, not comments, but ratings, I guess, on eBay were negative, but I didn't notice that until like after the fact. And then, sometimes, I mean, they have like 1,000 ratings, right? And so you think, well, every now and then something might go wrong. Well, most recently, they're just bad. Never heard from them, never received, down the line. And then there's like the random good one in the same time period. So you're like, man, is this person just like a straight up scammer,
Well, here's a scam, and this is what I believe happens because, like you said, I ordered something, I don't know, this might be a year ago, but it was actually a pretty crafty little scheme because the way that I imagine this works is, you buy the item, they provide your tracking number, you're like, oh, this is great, cool, everything's there. It ships out on time. Then as you're watching the tracking number, you see, oh, wait a minute, I live in Georgia. Why is it going to Florida? And then it says like package arrived, but it's not your address. It's arrived to another address, which I'm guessing is like probably someone's, the seller's like relative or friend or whatever. So then they basically can, and of course they never respond, like what you're saying. They never, all sort of, there's no sort of back and forth whatsoever. It's all, just one-ended, and they never respond until you're forced to take action with eBay.
Yeah.
But I think that's how they get around it. And they can say, no, look, it shows it shipped, and I don't know why it went to Florida.
But then they're just might only last like a couple of times. Now, one other thing that happened to me was they shipped it to my address. The tracking showed delivered, and I never got it. So I kind of like read about that. And
how do they get around that?
Yeah, so what ended up happening is I called my local post office and was like, "Hey, I was supposed to get an item. It says that it was delivered, but I never got it." So it's actually kind of cool. Like the post office actually has a pretty decent record keeping. So they kind of looked at it and they said, "Well, it does show it was delivered, but it shows that it was delivered to," and they said the house number like before mine, on our street. And I'm like, oh, well. So she said, well, not a problem. I can call, because I was like, well, my neighbor hasn't come by or anything. I don't really know those folks. They just moved in or whatever. So the lady that was at the post office said, no problem. I'll kind of make a call out to the driver and see if he can retrieve the package for you. I'm like, okay. And man, no kidding. That day, boop, it was in my mailbox. Pretty cool. Yeah. But anyways, in those Facebook groups, a little cautionary tale is you want to make sure that it's a group that is, I guess, vetted in a way. And whenever you do buy something from someone, even though it costs just like maybe $1 or so more, do the goods and services so that you can get that PayPal protection until you've bought something from that seller a couple times.
Just because I'm so foreign to this, like I don't use any of these, but you were telling me before, there's sort of like a standard, where like if there was a price, like you couldn't get ripped off in these groups. Like it's all about sort of
this
cultivating
one, this one, it's called Planet VHS Horror. That's the best group because the admins of the group are really kind of intense about like if someone's just posting like anything like stupid or rude kind of thing, they just kick them out, man. It's kind of like
they're lawful good, I guess.
Yeah, they're lawful good, exactly. And God, I just lost my train of thought, man.
Sorry, pal.
What were you asked me about? How does it go? I lost it again.
How they like won't really let anybody rip people off. Like they have to. It's not like a mandate, but weren't you telling me that they?
Oh yeah. So they have these. Part of their rules in the group is that, or I should say, are that if you are selling a tape, the cost of that tape cannot be. It has to be like less than somebody could get it on eBay, which I think is really cool because it kind of feeds the community and gives like more opportunity for people to like. And I've bought and met some really cool sellers, man, that just like they'll do like extra stuff, man. Like they'll send you like if you bought 4 tapes from them, sometimes they'll just throw in an extra tape because they know that you're like a new collector, or they'll like send you like some 80s stickers that have to do with that tape. Like when I bought a couple of the Batman movies, some dude like sent like a one of the old Batman trading cards was just in the box. Just little stuff like that, man. It's really, really
I like
neat.
that stuff.
But all that being said, Wizards is kind of one of my go-to places. I mean, I know that if I go there, they're going to have some really cool tapes that, you're not going to find on the shelves of a thrift store, more than likely. Like the odds of it happening are much less. I think I got Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 there. And then I ended up finding Star Trek 1 at like a yard sale. So like just little things like that you'll find. So they've got, I mean, here's the thing about Wizards. I'm just going to walk you through every single thing they have. And then eventually we're going to have to interview these guys, man. I'm so curious on like how they got started because they've been around a while.
Well, and also let me say, just before you get into this, that, the holidays are coming up. And like us, it's sort of always on our mind that like, support your local business. Everybody's buying everything through Amazon, and times are tough. And like a lot of these businesses are getting, people are losing their businesses and everything that they've worked so hard to have. And so if you can support your local businesses, and if you're in Gainesville, go to Wizards.
Yeah, man. Because I mean, it really does. That's, dude, 100%. Thank you for saying that. I mean, because like you said, times are crazy. Brick and mortar stuff is in danger, essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can find some of the stuff that they have in their store on eBay. I'm guaranteeing you that more than likely you'll end up paying more for it on eBay.
I looked a couple items up yesterday there, and they did have better prices.
Yeah, man. And not only that, if you're like a dad or a mom and you have like kids that are kind of into a bunch of just different things, whether it's video games, books, toys, I mean, anything like that, this is just an amazing store, There are stores that kind of exist out there that are just video games, like GameStop, for example. It's more like a big box. You go in there, it's, super shiny and corporate. Everything's brand new. They might have some used consoles, but these guys at Wizards, like, they do the work themselves to, like, refurbish old consoles. So you can go in there and find, like, an original Super Nintendo console, reasonably priced, to just get back into it. And tons of games, Super Nintendo games, for example, ranging anywhere from, like, $1 to, $9. And same with Xbox, all of the Xboxes, all the PlayStations, Nintendo 64 or whatever, GameCube, like they have games, just rows and rows of games and all those platforms. And then tons of old like retro toys and stuff. Like
Yeah, but what's even cooler is when you say tons, we're talking like tons of like loose figures too for like $2, $3.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, in any kind of thing that you can think of. And it's cool too, because every time you go, they have new stuff. Because one of the things that they do as well is, maybe you're not into that stuff anymore and your kids are kind of older and you're like, well, I don't really have any use for these like He-Man toys or Ninja Turtles or whatever. Or even like Power Rangers or even newer stuff like Paw Patrol or whatever. You can take your stuff in there and they'll kind of take a look at your collection or whatever and then offer you a price or give you like store credit for those items. And they're super fair, and obviously that's how they continue to just get stuff in. And so every single time you go, there's new stuff to look at, and it's just awesome, man. I mean, everything from like Star Wars toys, He-Man, Ninja Turtles, I mean, just so many, it would be impossible to list. I mean, literally I would leave off so many just trying to list them all, but it's just incredible the amount of selection that they have.
Transformers, Thundercats.
Yeah, I mean, all
old
of that
Star
stuff.
Wars, new Star Wars.
G.I. Joe. What were the My Little Monster? Or My Little Monster?
No, Monster in My Pocket.
Monster in My Pocket, that's what it was. All that, just so much.
Which sounds a lot worse than it is.
Oh boy. And then like we saw some Fangoria magazines. They have old like Mad and Cracked magazine. They have
a ton of like the little D&D mini figures.
Oh yeah, so they have a whole section. That was one of the reasons that we went back in there the other day was to check out their D&D stuff. But they also have other role-playing tabletop stuff in there. But they have mini figures for D&D,
which I kind of want to get into, but because man, they look so cool. But
the figures.
Yeah, but like my artistic side is like, yeah, but I want to paint them, but it's that's a lot of time. You gotta have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah, and the guys, man, the folks that work there are so friendly. They are kind of just like any of us. They're super into a lot of stuff. They're super knowledgeable of all the stuff.
One thing that we discovered yesterday from being there, I've been kind of chomping at the bit to get to is. So many of you, if you're like us and you were kids like us growing up in the 80s and 90s, Time Life had these amazing books. There was the UFO phenomenon. There was extraterrestrials. They would put out these series of books on like the paranormal, like sci stuff or like remote viewing to hidden artifacts and like, any sort of thing that would scratch that sort of paranormal itch. Well, up on the rack yesterday, we're looking through graphic novels, and we see these hardbound books that are pretty big. And since we're on like a big D&D kick at the moment and like fantasy style stuff, we pull them off, and they're called the Enchanted World books, and they're all like I guess it's just a whole other Time Life sort of
series,
series. And dude, they're amazing.
They look incredible. I mean, first off, too,
they look
the binding
like
even.
Yeah, like it looks like something you would buy for D&D. It looks like a Dungeon Master's like expansion book or something.
Yeah, I mean, when we saw these, it was like literally like finding a gold mine.
Like I got one completely on just like water spirits.
Yeah, and I got one that is the aptly one's called Wizards and Witches, one's called Legends of Valor, Night Creatures, and then the other one is just Ghosts. So they have all these like, especially on the Wizards and Witches and the Legends of Valor, they're all just like stories from different, it's all like folklore and stuff that has happened around the world, right? And I mean, even the Night Creatures and the Ghosts one has stories of creatures and apparitions in other countries like Japan and everything. So, I mean, just buying these yesterday, not only do we have some really killer like kickoff sort of content for, Dungeons and Dragons adventures in the future, but also really, really good stuff for next year's October Spooktacular because, I mean, some of this, or even just, I mean, gosh, we don't even have to wait until then to get spooky, do we, folks?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Maybe maybe we can find one for next week.
Yeah, they're right up our alley. I mean, we say the word folklore probably 115 times an episode, and it's exactly the stuff that we're into. Like I said, one book's just on water spirits, which is a pretty niche little slice of sort of paranormal fringe, folklore.
Yeah.
And it's cool. This one over here is from, ancient Britain. This one over here is from the Shogunate Empire in Japan. This one's over here. So it's really cool. What, pal? What?
I said, and I've got some from like Finland in early. Well, I derailed it quick, didn't I?
You sure did.
The fact that you found these is a testament to like how you really have to like dig through and just like
Gotta
keep
get in there,
on
man.
searching, because I kind of briefly glanced over the graphic novels and stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna go over here. I really wanted to find some single issues of like old like Doom Patrol and stuff, so I was kind of thumbing through there, and then I was like, well, I kind of want to find some Punisher or Wolverine stuff, and I was kind of going through there, and then I got distracted and went and looked at some of the video games and that kind of stuff, and Tyler was like, yeah, Woody, come check this out, and I come over there, and immediately we're just like, oh my gosh, man. And I mean, dude, how bad do you want to go back and grab those, whatever that magazine was, Dragon magazine?
Yeah, these like late 70s sort of.
I may have to go back
how
today,
would you describe it? Like
well, they're almost like it was almost like a industry,
like a fan
magazine,
club?
yeah, fan club magazine
Almost
for like
thing?
Dungeons and Dragons or like role playing, and it had like, man, dude, there's this one page in there that said something like like a DM convention, 1980.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing, man.
I mean, what?
That's
in the
so
world?
cool.
So I mean, that
Just-
one was a little bit hefty on the price. We were both kinda
Yeah.
like, well, we don't really want to pay that today, but still, boy, howdy.
I think with us, like I was born in 81. Woody was
1980.
born in early 70s.
God.
And I'm just kidding. I think we were a little late, a little bit. You know what I mean? Like my buddy Bruce, he's a little bit older than I am, but he would have been primed at this time. So like by the early 80s, he was, maybe getting into like teenage years or like adolescent, and just that like, I don't know, like, I just started rewatching the first season of Stranger Things just to kind of catch up. Just seeing the kids like in that first season playing Dungeons and Dragons, and just such a great like era. Like I wish that I would have been a little older, at that time and into all that stuff.
I mean, yeah, we were like a little too young to really kind of enjoy it at that time. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad that we're getting into it now because we actually have the money to buy stuff.
That's
and, it's like we kind of mentioned a couple episodes ago, even just about Dungeons and Dragons, like the perception of it has kind of shifted a little bit. When it came out late 70s, early 80s, parents were kind of scared of it because it was magic and they're, what? You're fighting
satanic
demons.
panic.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I look forward to us having a in-person game, like over at my place or whatever. And
Well, do you want to get into it, or do you want to? What do you want to finish up?
yeah, no,
talking
I was
about?
just gonna say one more thing about like Wizards that I think is super like kind of gravitational. Really, is that there's not a whole lot of stores anymore that you can get the same vibe that you could back in the day when you walked into like Blockbuster or just any video store or any, that's what I love about comic shops in general, is that feeling is kind of rare, it's not like walking into Target or Walmart, as soon as I do, it's like, I just want to get out of there. Yeah. This is kind of a place where you go and you browse and you like look at these things that, and it's fun for me to take my kids there. I mean, the hard part about it is they always want to get something because, there's so much cool stuff and it's kind of hard to argue with them because you're like, well, it's only $3. So, I mean, I kind of get in trouble a little bit with my wife whenever I take the kids there because we always come back with stuff. So anyway, if you ever get a chance, if you live in Georgia, you got to look up this place. It's in Gainesville, Georgia. And it's incredible. But yeah, dude, So yeah, also another thing that we did.
We ate at Moe's.
Well, we did eat at Moe's. But, we have been just dying to dive into playing a Dungeons and Dragons game, And so, like I've talked about before, I got the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials kit where it's kind of built to where you can do it as one dungeon master and one player, right? And so we've been trying to kind of like, slowly sort of learn and read about it, building characters and all that kind of stuff. And the other day we were like, okay, let's do this. Let's jump on Zoom. I'll let, my son who's 8 get, use an iPad or something. He can be in another room. He can use his character that we kind of built together, and then we'll just get it going. And so
keep in mind, Woody and I are extremely excited about this.
Yeah, dude, I made a custom dice box over the weekend,
which looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to post a picture of it. And so we're super excited. And I got, my son was too. We've been talking about it a lot. He wants his own set of dice, all this kind of stuff. He's like super into it. And we get started, and I have to say it's not partially. It's largely, I think, my fault. I found out quickly that, boy, there's a lot more to it. I don't really know what I'm doing, even if I'm just reading an adventure that's already really kind of just pre-written. There's just so much to it. And so I think what we kind of determined after, about an hour and 45. Well, let me tell you how we kind of thought, maybe we need to like hold off with the kids. Is all of a sudden my son's like, "Hey, Dad." He comes into the room. He's no longer on his on the Zoom call, so to speak. He's in person, and he's like, I'm not really having a good. This is kind of boring. I'm like, oh man, a dagger to the heart.
I could just hear Woody's heart just going.
And this is how like sweet and thoughtful and sensitive my son is. Like, I asked him to like close the door or whatever so that me and Tyler could keep going. And my wife texted me while we were up here, and she's like, "Hey, our son he's pretty like kind of sad because he thinks that he made you sad and disappointed that he really didn't want to play anymore and stuff." And so after we got off the call or whatever, Tyler and I called him up to my office and I was like, "Hey man, it's all good. I'm still learning. I'm sure it was boring for you. You sat there for like an hour and a half while I'm like, well, let me look that up."
Yeah.
So needless to say, there's so much more that I got to learn. It's kind of intimidating, but it was just so funny how he just wanted to get the heck out of Dodge, man.
Well, it was funny too because when we first started, also this is something that I'm sure the podcast knows by now. Woody and I are very, very thorough, and we really get into the details. It's all. Whether you're talking about my art, whether you're talking about just how like streamlined everything is that we do, or we try to do with the podcast, we kind of get off on like the detail stuff. And so the first clue that Woodrow is going to be like, I don't know if I love this, is Woody and I are talking about like our character backgrounds, and we're talking about like how, this character comes from this, and he was born in this class, and he, all the backstory to kind of get us all caught up. And he like mid-sentence, he's like, "Okay, let's go, guys." And then the second clue is, and this was near the end when I think he had just had enough. Like, we're all sort of seeing it on like different, I can see Woody, and then I can see Woodrow, and then Woody has like the maps up on the screen, like on the bigger panel, and you start to see Woodrow get a little restless, and like he's no longer at his desk. And now he's like standing on his bed, like across the room.
Other side of the room.
Yeah.
And what is he saying? Like, can you see me?
Yeah. You got to give it to him. He did hang around for a while, but
yeah, I think it's a lot
young
to ask of an 8-year-old, especially not in person. I think it would be a totally different kind of thing if we had like the game mat out and figures and like. You know what I'm saying? Like the map in front of them. I think that would be totally different, but whatever. So we've kind of decided like what we're going to do is hopefully kind of organize like a short campaign with one of our buddies who DMs pretty regularly, and he's going to kind of set it up for us so we can kind of learn the ropes, get used to it, have a little bit more of an understanding of how everything works, like, kind of know what's what.
Well, let me say too. I used to play a ton in middle school, and pretty much all of my knowledge of this is directly from my middle school, early high school, years. And we would play sort of a simplified game. My cousin Colt, and I would DM. And it's weird now because like I can't remember how it worked, but like yesterday when we were playing, one of the things that was sort of like not confusing, but it sort of an unanswered thing. It's like, okay, say you're in the tavern over here, and then you just want to walk like across town to this other building. It's like, it seemed, from the surface, it seems like easy. It's like, okay, you're just, you're talking your players through, and they're going from this building to this building. But it's like that, the sort of the connective tissue of like, okay, well, how much detail is supposed to be put into doing this mundane walk through the town, or how much, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, okay, you run into this and now it's time for combat.
Yeah.
It's like, how much do you actually put into, walking 3 blocks to another building?
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, that was sort of so I've been getting into like even, some D&D podcasts and stuff, which, man, there's a lot of really terrible ones, but, and we are by no means a D&D podcast. We're just getting kind of back into it, or me getting back into it. What are you getting into it?
Man, dude, I forgot to tell you this, but I started watching, do you remember that? Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to talk about a movie that I read the book when I was a kid. I watched this movie, and then kind of recently it just kind of popped up on Netflix. I believe there's even like a remake that's out now. And I thought, oh, this might be kind of cool for a movie night. Well, I don't think so. So let's get into it in just a second when we get back from this quick break.
You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear R2-D2 beep like this.
You have one new message.
Hey, this is Ashton from Dallas, Georgia. For years, I've been on a quest to find a show that incorporates all my favorite things: the Goonies, the paranormal, retro video games, and sexy primatologists. Everyone said I was wasting my time, but thanks to the oddly specific interests of Woody and Tyler, my search has come to an end. You're listening to my new favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad.
Let's begin now.
Do you remember that movie, The Witches?
Oh, yeah.
With Angelica Huston and from 1990?
Yep, The Witches of Eastwick. I remember it well.
No, God. No, but what's funny is I actually did, when I was a kid, man, I used to get that mixed up. So if I saw that was like on TV or something, I'm like, oh, cool, man, I like this movie. Nope, not it.
Yeah, Witches of Eastwick was like pretty intense.
I don't
was like a little
remember it.
kid.
Yeah, I don't remember it really. But this one, The Witches, was based on the book by Roald Dahl. And, it's funny. When I was a kid, I was super into reading, and actually Roald Dahl was one of my go-tos kind of. I read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, James and the Giant Peach.
Well, James and the Giant Durian for you, but
I never read Fantastic Mr. Fox, but
I did. I love
it. Does make sense that he wrote that. And then Big Friendly Giant, he also wrote Matilda, all this kind of stuff.
By the way, I did not know that he was behind I guess it's just called BFG.
Yeah.
Which is actually a pretty cool movie.
It's also Steven Spielberg,
Yeah, yeah.
And, here's something that I didn't know about Roald Dahl. So in 1943, he wrote a book called The Gremlins.
What?
So I kind of looked that up real quick because I was like, man, I remember reading a bunch of his books, but like, what books did I read? And I saw that he wrote one called The Gremlins, and I thought, Gremlins was also produced by Steven Spielberg, so is there any kind of connection there? Turns out, loosely kind of inspired the movie Gremlins.
Well, is it just like a short story or like an actual
No, it's a straight up book.
children's book? Wow. I had found out several years ago, again, being big into like folklore and all that kind of stuff. I discovered that Mogwai are actually Japanese yokai, which roughly translates to like Japanese like demons, but they're not demons like Judeo-Christian demons, like we Westerners sort of call demons. But like, yeah, they're these yokai spirits that they come down in like drops of water, like rainwater. And then that's how they like get here. And then when the water, when the raindrops fall to the ground, like that's how they arrive, I guess. But I always thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, man. I remember too there being like some sort of either novelization of the movie Gremlins that came out later that kind of better explains the connection and the overall sort of like theme of the Mogwai kind of representing man's like gluttony and all this kind of stuff. But
totally remember this.
Yeah, so we're looking at a picture of Roald Dahl's book, The Gremlins, which, man, I had no idea that it was his first book and was written for Walt Disney Productions in like anticipation of a full feature-length animated film that essentially was just never made.
Well, and I was going to say the original term, like gremlins themselves were kind of like these mischievous, trickster little like elf, goblin things that would like mess up electronics. And a lot, as you can see on the cover, a lot of it was in a lot of like early World War II aircraft and stuff that say, oh, the gremlins are making the plane act up again. And that's crazy. By Flight Lieutenant Roald Dahl. That's amazing.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, that's really cool.
But yeah, okay. So the movie The Witches, I remember as a kid, like I was super excited about the movie coming out because I'd read the book. And, it came out in 1990, so I was about, depending on what time of year, I was either 9 or 10. And I would say, I think a 9 or 10-year-old could handle the movie, but definitely not.
1990? I thought it was like 80s.
And what's funny about it too, man, is it's kind of billed as like a dark fantasy comedy. And you're like, it is certainly dark. I'm not too sure about it being like comedic in any way.
Right.
So I started rewatching it. First off, and I'm not going to, talk about the ending or spoil anything, but the way that it begins essentially is this kid who, has a really good relationship with his grandma, and his parents are there. His parents essentially go to some event or they leave for the weekend. Maybe they're dropping him off to stay with his grandma. And then like, this is just right in the first like 3 or 4 minutes, she's kind of telling the kid about witches when she was growing up and how they have like these characteristics of like, they actually don't have toes. They just have like stubs of them, and they're like bald, and they all wear wigs and they have long fingers, and, that children like smell really bad to them and they just despise children, and how they like trick people and children and all this kind of stuff. Well, she's kind of telling this story before he goes to bed, and the parents are like, well, don't scare him, good night, blah, blah, blah. They leave and go wherever they're going. Then like a minute later, all of a sudden there's like a cop coming to the door, and he's like, we're sorry that, they don't really like say it out loud on the screen, but essentially you assume the parents have passed away.
What?
It's super sad. Yeah, man. Then the grandmother's like got custody of this kid. She's kind of sick, so they go to this like hotel. The grandma kind of has told him that, she really believes in him because when she was a kid, she had a run-in with a witch. And that one of her friends, again, man, this is like, if you're looking at this through the eyes of like an 8-year-old, this would be terrifying. One of her friends gets essentially trapped in a painting by one of these witches.
Wow.
And so they have to go to this hotel by the sea. I guess the air is better for her or something. I'm not real sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when all this craziness ensues. They just happen to be there at a time when there's like a witch convention, and it's under the like disguise of like this Royal Society of people against children violence or something like that.
Right.
And it's pretty cool because the hotel manager's Rowan Atkinson, or Mr. Bean, as most people know him. And so that's kind of funny. I guess that's the comedy.
Comedic relief. Yeah.
I guess. Anyway, all this crazy stuff happens, man. This kid like turns into a mouse. The witches have kind of, the main witch, Angelica Huston, has developed this like potion that they can put into like chocolate, okay? So that they can turn all these kids into mice and not be caught because it's kind of got a delayed reaction, yada, yada, yada. You know, just this one scene of this kid like transforming into like a mouse is just nuts looking, man.
And I remember that well. That's one of the few things that I do remember about it. And I remember the when she, I guess, reveals what she
takes
really
off her
looks
wig
like.
and mask and stuff.
Yeah, it was like super intense.
Yeah, it's pretty like, you know, gross. And one thing too about this movie that I didn't remember was that it was a Jim Henson production. It was actually the last film that he worked on before he passed away. So, I mean, the effects are relatively good and stuff, but man, it's like when this kid's transforming into a mouse, it's pretty gross. It like spews like this green gas and like, you know, it's just.
And I remember like the way his mouth sort of turns into like a nose.
Yeah.
It just looked really, it was like really bizarre sort of the transformation.
Man. It was definitely weird, but I don't remember it like traumatizing me or something as a kid. I remember it being kind of like, I just thought it was cool, you know? So I'm interested to see what they do with this new one.
Yeah, I kind of want to see the new one with Anne Hathaway, but I was planning on watching it with my 5-year-old Amelia, but I don't know. Now I'm kind of having second thoughts.
Yeah, because I saw a picture of what Anne Hathaway looks like as the witch, whatever. It looks a little. Imagine they did something to her mouth that reminded me of kind of like Fright Night, you know, where it's just like super wide and like this big, weird, sort of like scary mouth.
Well, to me, it almost looked like Heath Ledger Joker. Like she has these like scars almost that look like out, like on the sides of her mouth, like pre-transformation, I guess.
I mean, that movie, The Witches, definitely lands in like maybe not even a short list. Maybe it's like a big list that we need to put together. But it's like movies that we saw when we were kids that we really, boy, I can't believe we watched them then. You know, I mean, there's that one. There's,
I mean, Gremlins itself is.
Dude, Critters 2 has like boobs.
Does it?
Oh yeah, man.
Wow, man. Yeah, I mean, just Gremlins, just the scene about the. Actually, I think we've mentioned it on the podcast, but just the scene where she's talking about her dad dressing up as Santa and then getting caught in the chimney is yikes.
Yeah, man. I mean, just like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before too, but like I definitely saw Bloodsport way too soon.
Oh, me too. Yeah, that was one thing that my dad was just like obsessed with action movies as a kid, and so I mean all those like Commando, all the American Ninjas,
Desert Storm,
Universal Soldier was another one. All the Steven Seagal early movies. I mean,
there was just a time period where that was just. I feel like there was just like this huge. Well, I guess they probably still make that sort of like action movie. I guess
movies?
I guess they just go straight to DVD or something. Please tell me that you've watched the videos of Steven Seagal running.
No.
What?
No, are they amazing?
Oh my God, man. Yes. Hold on, dude. I am.
And isn't he in like his? He's kind of like in a blues band or something now, right?
Oh, dude, the guy is nuts.
I think that's like his thing now. I mean, Van Damme actually he's kind of having like a renaissance again. Well, I mean, I guess a few years ago he kind of came
wait
back.
Till you see this, man. Look at that. The first one that comes up here. Just look at this guy, man.
Man, what a thin neck.
Yeah, just look at him running, bro.
It's
like a known, dude, it's a known thing. Look at him. Look, wow. What's he doing? He's doing like a windmill thing with one arm.
I mean, he's giving it his all, though. You gotta give it to him for that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I will say, when I was a kid, I thought it was awesome. But
man,
just
he was
imagine,
awesome.
Bro, just imagine somebody running like this in real life. Like,
head down,
like, look at this.
Forward.
If you forget about the eyes, forget about the head. What's he doing with his arms, man?
Man, fleet feet. Look at him. He's
just looking over the canyon. I've got to train. I must train for this.
Yeah, now what was his deal? Because they would always sort of try to tie in like a little bit of Native American, a little bit of Asian.
So apparently, and it's funny because you can go back and watch some, oh my God, you got to see, you got to hear this. This is an interview with Tom Arnold talking about a role that he had with Steven Seagal and his entire experience with it. And it might be the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah, I got a great Steven Seagal story. Do you want to hear it real quick?
I want to hear
Sweet,
Steven
dude,
Seagal.
sweet.
Okay, Steven Seagal, a great man, great actor. I mean, this was his big chance. Joel Silver produced this movie. This is a big movie, and was it DMX? DMX and Anthony Anderson is my partner in this movie, and Anthony Anderson and I have great chemistry, hilarious. And we were shooting on a houseboat up in Toronto. The director said, well, let's practice. Let's rehearse this scene one time. It's kind of complicated. We're sitting around, it's DMX or whatever. And Steve Seagal's like, I don't rehearse, man. He goes, no, seriously, just for camera, will you let us rehearse? No, let's just shoot it. Let's shoot this. He goes, okay. So anyways, he starts, and Steven Seagal's like, well, I will tell you one thing. And he starts to get up. He goes, I'm going to kick all your asses. And he starts walking out towards what he thinks is a door, but it's not the right door. It's the door that goes into the ocean. Okay, I swear. And I'm going to say, oh my gosh, you're going to the wrong door. But then I know what's happening, so I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. And he takes a step and he drops into the ocean, just out of frame.
Man.
And you know, at the time he colored in his hair, he had about that much black, like magic marker kind of thing. He's a great guy, by the way. And he wouldn't wear a hairpiece, so he just painted in. And if you watch the movie up close, you could go, oh my God, there's like an inch of black stuff. And he's like kind of fat for a muscle guy. He's got very big wrists, so. And he's, you know, and he, so I looked down and I was like, holy buddy. And so he comes up, he's sort of embarrassed, and because, you know, and the black stuff is running up. But, you know, that was fun. That was great.
That's
That was
amazing.
a great moment.
That's
but
amazing.
I remember going, I should tell him. And I look at the director and he's like, and then he walks and then, I love Steven Seagal. He's a good dude.
We believe you.
Yeah, he's awesome. And
He's a
very
good
sensitive.
dude.
For real, like this, he's going to hear about it. He's going to say, why did you? And I'm going to be like, oh my God, it's an amazing story, buddy.
See, dude.
Oh, I love that dude.
It's the best.
I mean, I know he was like a very serious, was pretty intense of a guy, I think.
Yeah. So kind of, man. But like there was sort of a beef between him and Van Damme. He would say stuff like, you know, that guy could never beat me. I'm, you know, whatever. And like it kind of come to find out, like the story was that he trained in Japan from this like master of Aikido. Okay. And that he was just like this devoted student, and then, you know, won all these like underground fighting things. And like there's just this big, he, you know, was approached by the government, you know, just this elaborate story that for the most part, most people say completely false, fake, fabricated. I mean, not that I've, you know, fought him, but anyway, you got to look up all of the beef between him and like any of these other action stars. He talks so much trash, man. It is amazing.
Well, so
Like,
wait, so what's his nationality? Is he like
bro.
Native American? Or no, wait. Wasn't
I know he did.
wasn't he from Canada?
I don't know, man. That's what I'm saying. There's just so much like mystique and mystery that I'm thinking like he just had a really smart publicist that was like, hey, you know some martial arts. Here's the route that I think you should take. And they sat down one day and probably rolled some dice and came up with his backstory, man, because I think it's all fabricated BS. Oh, you know what? Since we're talking about wizards, we're talking about witches, we're talking about fantasy type stuff. I think what would be really, really cool is if we had a battle that we set up that our listeners can participate in for us to kind of, because, you know, as we've been scrolling through, you know, obviously in October, we watched a ton of scary movies.
Oh, yeah.
I still am kind of watching scary stuff, but I'm in the mood to kind of start watching some of the great fantasy movies from our childhood.
Yes.
And so
Yeah,
what I
love it.
really want to do is put together some sort of like showdown between, you know, all of those movies so that we can really kind of figure out which one is voted and determined the best of the best from that era, and then really kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into those, or at least talk about them in some way in like a future episode. So I think what we're going to do, starting, I don't know, sometime this week, is kind of put that bracket together and start having, you know, a vote, you know, like a vote, well, what would you call it? Like a vote off? I mean, what do you call that?
Like I can't want to say raffle, but I know that's not the correct word.
Like,
Like a
we'll put together
like
this bracket where us and the
like
listeners
process of
can
elimination,
vote,
I guess?
Yeah, can vote between, you know, two movies that are like kind of going head to head in one section to ultimately find out what movie was the winner of them all. And so we're talking about everything from like Conan the Barbarian to like Red Sonja and like
Kroll.
Kroll and
Lady Hawk, Dragon Slayer.
man, what is the one?
Beastmaster.
My wife, Beastmaster.
The Princess Bride.
Well, yeah, the Princess Bride.
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
I mean, not Labyrinth.
Yeah, the Labyrinth is, well,
Not really. No. What am I trying to say? The other Tom Cruise one.
well, Tom Cruise isn't in Labyrinth, but God,
No, it's Legend.
Legend.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a million that we're not even thinking of. So we're gonna put all of those against each other, and we're kind of do it in like a strategic way to where, like, obviously, like Legend's not going to go up against Conan because they're kind of two different movies. So we're kind of try to line them up relatively similar so that the battle is kind of a fair, and we'll kind of see which one wins. And we'll kind of design that bracket to look kind of cool.
Man, that would be rad. 80s fantasy face-off.
Yes. Oh,
Let's
my
do this.
gosh, dude, I love it. Yeah. Because then, ultimately too, it makes us have to go back and watch some of these. And I got to tell you, what's her name that was in Red Sonja? She was also in like Celebrity whatever. Flav.
Oh, yeah.
Flav.
Man, what was her name?
Bridget something.
Brigitte Nielsen?
Yeah. Yes.
Was
and
it
she was
Bridget
also
or
in that movie.
Brigitte?
I don't know, man. She was also in that movie Cobra with Sylvester Stallone. Remember that one?
Oh, you're right. Didn't she die in Cobra? Did she
Probably,
die?
man. Whew, spoiler alert. But I always thought it was
Sorry,
so
folks.
freaking rad that Sylvester Stallone just like walked around with a match in his mouth instead of a toothpick.
Oh, yeah.
So bad, man.
Wait, real quick. What's the era? Is it only 80s?
Let's do
Because
like
if so, then that takes away
Excalibur
the-
and stuff.
Well, it takes away like Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit stuff. But we do have the Hobbit animated.
Yeah, and Lord of the Rings animated too. So this what'd you call it? Face Off?
80s fantasy face-off.
Yeah, 80s Fantasy Face Off is going to be taking place on Instagram. So if you don't already, check us out. Give us a follow, like our pictures, all that good stuff at That Would Be Rad. Anyways, that's just a great place for us to interact with you and to get to know, for you to get to know us a little bit better. But that's where it's going to take place. That's where we're going to be doing the face-off, so your votes will matter. We'll announce the full bracket, probably, I don't know, next week. We'll kick off, I guess, the first sort of face-off next week as well, so that we can have some time to kind of put it all together. But I think it's a good place to stop. A couple things to kind of circle back. One, definitely go check out Wizards. It's a brick and mortar that is just incredible. It doesn't matter what you're into. Chances are you're going to find something there that is just really cool, either for yourself, for your kids. Definitely something that's going to remind you of whenever you were a kid, and really cool stuff now as an adult. It's just really, really awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, as always, for listening. And the back and forth communication is, on Instagram, and that's kind of what we live for. We love, talking to like-minded folks like ourselves who love all this kind of nerdy stuff and 80s nostalgia and all the things that we valued so much as a kid.
Yeah, on Instagram, you can also click the link in our bio there. That's where you can sign up for our future dispatch, which is kind of like our email mailing list where we're going to be announcing all the exciting stuff that we have planned for the next couple of months, including, but not limited to, That Would Be Rad merchandise, That Would Be Rad website, and all the other exciting things that we have in store. I'm super excited.
I'm super excited. So we love you. We appreciate you. We thank you all for your continued support and listening. And as always,
Be rad.
That's the way it goes. The way it You're my favorite song on the radio. some sunshine. You were already dead, for you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers.